Smith getting all from West Coast as he clings to the lead from Delamera. Irep is third at the inside. Cameron is fourth. It is West Coast, and he keeps on rolling. And West Coast goes wire to wire. It's the Travers.
Live from the backstretch at historic Saratoga Racecourse, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow. Racing Across America is brought to you by Pinnell's Restaurant, a Saratoga tradition since 1922. 284 Jefferson Street, Saratoga, just minutes from the track. Thoroughfan, giving the fan a voice. Find them at thoroughfan.com. And Woodbine Racetrack. Pick, bet, and cheer on world-class horse racing north of the border.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this Wednesday morning, the beginning of the end, as it were. Closing week up here at Saratoga, but we are still live on the backstretch right in front of Clare Court on what is a little bit of a steamy morning as the heat and humidity has returned, but otherwise looks like a nice day. And from the forecast I was looking at this morning, no rain in the forecast, so that's good news. But as I say, a little hot right now, so I left my jacket off, kind of informal, but that's what closing week is all about. It's a little more relaxed. I always tell people one of the best weeks up here and some good racing coming up. Coming up on today's show, a little bit later, Skip Dickstein will join us from the Times-Union. Like to get the photographers over here once or twice a year to kind of introduce you to the people behind the scenes. You watch and look at their work all the time during the race meet. Skip will be in with us in just a few, and a little bit after that, Shug McGahee will join us. A longtime fixture on the New York racing scene, certainly, and you look down the list of horses he has trained, kind of a who's who. He's in the Hall of Fame. He's an Eclipse Award winner, and he's got some horses coming up and some nice runners from earlier in the meet as well that we'll talk about, as well as much, much more. We're right here, opening segment, as usual, on a Wednesday. Happy to be joined by our friend Joe Clancy from the Saratoga Special. Joe, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very good. Happy to have you on board for essentially the grand finale of the Saratoga Special visits. And I will ask you, I asked Sean last week, I think it's worse this week from looking up in the press box. You and Sean and the Tom Law, the real staff, I guess the workload goes up as the college kids and the interns go back, because looking down the press box, the usual interns have disappeared from the press box since Travers Day.
We're going to miss Ben Gowans and Shayna Tiller and the team. They do a lot of the heavy lifting. You know, we're trying to make it all go, but they do a lot. They're the ones in the winner's circle talking to people every day, a lot more often than we are, and we're certainly going to miss the effort. But we'll see it through. Everybody picks up a little more. We'll be over there for the jump race, pick up a couple races. Sean, Tom, and I were actually doing a little stint on the delivery cart the other day, so that happens as well. So it's that time of year. It's always the way it is.
And you guys do a great job. And again, we'll remind people, this is horseracing.com. Pick it up online. I have a link to the archives of all the Saratoga specialists from the meet over on Equidaily, and you can pick it up at the track and around town in the hard copy version. You guys do a great job. And once again, I will tout as I am handicapping every day. And I feel like I'm doing okay, but I am still the tortoise chasing the hair of John Sarpazian.
He could take the rest of the week off, I think, and still be right there in the top 5 or so. But, yeah, John Sarpazian does a great job handicapping, and I think I've said it before. He once laid out to me the amount of work he does and how he works it all out, and he's up at 2 o'clock in the morning making final decisions because he went to bed at 6, you know. So a little different take on it than probably the rest of us, but he does really well, and you can't argue with the picks at all.
Yeah,
so,
people have come up
right
to
there, and he gets some grief for picking favorites, but I always say he's the guy, he might be the only guy who went out publicly picked Arrogate up here a couple of years ago, and at a big price, and while everybody else was going other directions.
No,
so
he's
worth following for sure.
Yeah, I talk to people on the front side occasionally. Hey, where do I go and who do I look at? And I said, pick up the special, look at your page. He's the guy. You'll do a good job just with those picks. Also. Want to touch a little bit on what we saw over the weekend, and of course you guys do great coverage on a day-to-day basis. We have the stretch run here of the Travers. Let's go back. Catholic Boy kind of runs away with this one. That he won wasn't totally unexpected. I had him in my mix. The question was the surface, but that he won as easily as he did firmly now puts him in that number 2 role. in the 3-year-old division, easily number 1 of the active 3-year-olds, but this was a pretty nice performance.
Yeah, really impressive to me. I mean, the way he did it, the way he's up there stalking Mendelssohn early. Javier put him in the race, and you might have said early from the 11 post, what's he going to do? And man, he just took control of the race and blew the whole field apart. And great training job. I mean, you can say what you want. I mean, turf, dirt, whatever. The horse has won 2 Grade 1s. He's that versatile. He can do things like that. And fair play to Jonathan Thomas and the team for getting it done. Very nice horse. He walking by or walking around the stable area, you don't even have to be a horseman or anything. When Catholic Boy walks by, you kind of back up and go, whoa, who's that? Like, he's just a beautiful horse, and he delivered on the day. Great effort.
There was some great video going around of him in the pen on the morning of the race, kind of jumping around and bucking and squealing and kind of indicating it was his day.
Yeah, exactly, which is cool. Yeah.
Also, we're going to take a look here, stretch run of the Personal Ensign. Obviously a little controversy, and unfortunately the bumping incident took away from what otherwise, if you just step back and put that aside, this was one of the best races of the meet, and one of the best races probably as we get to the end of the year. It's what you want. It's the 2 horses you wanted to hook up in the race. They did. They hooked up in a stretch-long duel. Abel Tasman edges a late, but as they say, this will wind up being one of the better races of the meet.
For sure. I wish we didn't have the bumping. I wish they ran down the lane that far apart, that wide apart all the way, and one of them won by a head, and you would have said, there it is, whoever won. And fantastic effort by both. Abel Tasman is a game as they come. I've covered enough of her races where she kind of just makes that oddball middle move, and Mike Smith says, I got to leave her alone. I got to let her do it, and then she hangs on. Is that tough when a horse as good as a late runs at her? So really good race. You hope you get to see them go at it again and have a kind of a cleaner trip with no excuses for anybody.
Said on some of the other results, promises fulfilled look great in the sprint. Jerkins, the 4-go. It was Whitmore, Ron Maquette. We had him in on Sunday.
Oh, great.
Battling some health issues and gets that. I've liked Whitmore since last year.
He's a fun horse. A really fun horse to watch. There was a great video of him playing in the sprinkler over at the Stakes Barn. The Stakes Barn has sort of that courtyard, and the sprinklers in there keeping the grass growing, and they had Whitmore standing there, and he had his head right in the sprinkler like a dog. It was great, fantastic. It's that fun horse to root for and fun horse to watch for sure.
And as I say, Dale with promises fulfilled, and Dale with an exacta there with the West Point horse 7 Trumpets running second, so that was a nice day for Dale as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Then guy familiar to you, obviously, down the Mid-Atlantic, Chuck Lawrence in the Sword Dancer. We had him on Sunday as well, and that was a nice kind of popular victory with the guy coming up here and getting a nice Grade 1 for the second win at the meet, and for the second time everybody else falls asleep as that one goes out on the front end, gets it done.
No, he's a very talented horse, and you talk to Chuck about him, and he kind of gets dismissed a little bit because he's dropped down into the claiming ranks to get some wins or to get his career back on track. He has some bleeding and breathing issues, but they seem to have sorted that out. I think he's always been a good horse. The issues are what held him back, and it was kind of fun. Chuck's a former champion jump jockey from Virginia, and Jonathan Thomas, he was a jump jockey, both also from Virginia. So the Virginia guys came up with the Sword Dancer and the Travers at the end of the day, which was fun.
We talked before with you and with Sean about the alumni from the Saratoga Special, Gabby and Travis, Gabby Gaudette, Travis Stone, among others. But now I think we have to have one, because right after the Catholic Boy win, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. Wasn't Panagot? He was in Panagot now. They gave him tip of the hat. Jonathan Thomas said Panagot is the guy who is now the agent. He was the representative for Bob LaPenta, but now is the agent for Javier Castellano. Helped get Castellano on Catholic Boy, but Panagot yet another.
Yeah, he came to us. He said, "This is it's." I don't know how long ago, 6 or 7 years ago at least. I'm going to struggle on that. But anyway, he said, I would like to be a jocks agent. And he went through all these other careers, and worked for us for a couple summers, handicapped, wrote, did a little bit of everything, went to Grand Motion for a little while, and now he's got Javier Castellano's book. And I saw him earlier in the day, and Javier wasn't having a very good day. And I told John that, your day might get a lot better. Look out. And then it did, which was really cool. Very happy for him, and he was obviously thrilled. So it was really cool.
They got a lot better.
Yeah, his day got a lot better.
That's 6 wins for Castellano in that race, which is an amazing
Phenomenal,
stat
right?
as well. As this will be your last visit, just kind of step back and what are the highlights of the meet for you? What kind of stands out over the course of the 6+ weeks at this point?
It's such a blur. It's a crazy thing. We say it all the time. We're like, it seems like it's going really fast, but then you feel like you've been here a long time. Chuck Lawrence coming up with that horse and winning two graded turf stakes for a guy he had won one graded stake in his life, and it was in the 90s, I think. So for a guy like that to come up, and especially somebody we're connected to, it'll be interesting to see what some of these 2-year-olds do in the stakes toward the end of the meet. Is whether you can get a line on horses going forward. The horse of Bill Mott's, the 2-year-old Mucho. Very impressive. And Nitrous, the other horse from Steve Asmussen. I don't know. They're nice horses, and you kind of want to see them take the next step, which is fun. The racing's so good. It gets to be a bit of a grind when you're working in it because it's 6 days, but the racing's so good, and you got to appreciate it.
And I'll toss out there, and I know because you guys covered both of the sales and obviously the racing, that this stands out to you as well. But I think one of the storylines of the meet was that middle portion where there was about the 10-day period where the New York breds were just crazy on the racetrack and over at the sales as well.
Voodoo Song coming up like that the way he did, and after the meet he had last year, and then to come up and take it another step forward this year, really cool, really fun.
And Linda Rice now talking about running in one more time in the stake up here. We'll see how that works out, but you can't count them out. Clearly.
No, this is actually an easy schedule for him this year compared to last year. So
that's right.
Fun again. I because of the way growing up with the horses, you always sort of take the approach of who's a fun horse to follow, and he's a really fun horse to follow. And sort of the same with Elate to kind of get back to another year, and Abel Tasman coming up, and hopefully Catholic Boy sticks around. We get to see him keep doing it, and they're fun horses to follow.
Yeah, it's been a nice meet on the stake side. The weather has been a little bit funky, but when you look at the horses, and as we get into the fall and some of the important stakes races, and certainly into the Breeders' Cup, Saratoga is going to play an important part.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we always like to talk a little bit about the jumpers when you guys visit, and there is one more jump race left on the calendar up here at Saratoga. That's today's first race. It's an allowance, non-winners of 2 lifetime, 2 3/8. While we talk, I pulled up the allowance from August 1st. The Boss Man, the number 2 horse, is going to win, but running second is number 5, Dark Gemini. Dark Gemini in the morning line today, 8-5, and kind of looks legitimate there. I thought Dancing in the Rain was interesting, coming in off a win last time down at Monmouth. I thought Get the Basil, going back to the jump races earlier this year, could be a player as well. So I think it's a little bit interesting, but it does look like it goes through the second place finisher here, Dark Gemini. What are your thoughts on today's jump race?
Yeah, the race to me really goes through him, especially last Shawnee, the 4 for Jonathan Shepard is scratched, so you're down to a 6-horse field. Dark Gemini, that race was only 6 horses too, and he kind of had to wait going around the turn. He got behind 3 horses, and I know Willie McCarthy didn't want to go 4 wide, and while he was back there behind them, Boss Man kind of got away, and then you see Dark Gemini make up a lot of ground late. I think he's clearly the horse to beat. He's going to be 4-5 or 6-5. It sort of depends on how much money's in the pool, but I think he's going to be a legit heavy favorite. If I'm trying to pick, I've got to try to beat him. It's just the way I would approach it. And Dancing in the Rain to me has some upside coming in for Bernie and Kate Dalton. Bernie's going to give him a good ride. He's going to get a chance. His coming off the win at Monmouth, he's certainly confident enough. He might not have the experience Dark Gemini has, but I think his horse will offer a little value in a race where it's a little tricky to find it.
Yeah, it seemed like maybe last time kind of got the hang of it. That was the 4th start over the jumps and led him all the way around. And I always say it's counterintuitive. You think the longer they go, the less speed, but really speed's better the longer they go. So if this horse could make the lead again today, also gets a little break in the weights as compared to Dark Gemini. Gets 5 pounds from that one. Goes up a couple of pounds from the win down at Monmouth, but at the 147, as they say, gets a break as compared to the logical favorite in there.
Sure.
So certainly some things to like. And again, you'll be on with Andy this.
Yep, here in about an hour.
Very good. And once you guys wrap up, what's next for Saratoga Special and This Is Horse Racing website?
Go home, breathe, regroup a little bit. We cover a fair amount of Mid-Atlantic stuff, so I'll be around Fair Hill Training Center trying to keep up with some of those horses. Probably be at the jump races back at Belmont on the 20th of September, Pennsylvania Derby Day. Then for me, Maryland Million, and Sean will probably be at the Far Hills jump races in New Jersey, which is a great day of racing, which is going to have full pari-mutuel wagering this year, so I think it'll be available on all these networks, which will be fun. Really, really good card of jump racing. I mean, it's 800,000 in purses for the day, and it'll be some horses come from overseas. Should be a great day.
That will be fun to see what the handle is.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
whatnot.
On a major day,
Yeah.
and where they can spread the signal wide enough. A lot.
They've been chasing it for a few years now.
And I think they finally got it sorted out. They're going to hub it through Monmouth Park, and I think you'll be able to see what it might open some doors to do some more steeplechase stuff like that. All the steeplechases are sort of these one-day meets, and to set up on-site betting just for one day, just the cost of you need the tellers, you need the machines, you got to wire everything together. It's sort of a big undertaking. But if you can get the signal out far enough, it might be something that more of our meets could do, which would help educate people and get them a little idea what the game's about, and maybe they recognize horses when they show up here or at Belmont.
It'll be fun, and certainly during the year, we talked to you and Sean by phone, and I imagine that weekend we'll definitely have one or the other on board to give us some ideas. Joe, as always, appreciate the visits during the season, both you and Sean cycling in here. Again, we tell people to pick up copies of the Saratoga Special Around Town or On Track, or go to thisishorseracing.com. Thanks a lot.
Great,
Good job this year. Keep it going through the last
stretch.
week.
Got 4 to go.
I'm right with you. I went home last night and sat in front of the TV and immediately fell asleep.
Yeah.
So we're at that time of year, but it's fun. And the last week, again, a little more relaxed, but the great racing continues. Joe, again, thanks.
Great, thank you.
All right, we'll take a break. Skip is in the house. We'll talk racing photography right after this. Stay tuned.
Birdstone is an outside front. They're coming down to the finish. Can Smarty Jones hold on? Here comes Birdstone. Birdstone surges past. Birdstone wins the Belmont Stakes.
You know, and make better decisions, better choices, to know how to connect the dots. In horse racing, knowledge is a powerful tool, but not the only tool. Race results and replays, past performances and live streaming, wagering from all your digital devices. These too are important tools, and you'll find them all right here at Capital OTB. Capital OTB. Become a better horse player.
The backstretch workers are the heart and soul of what we do.
They're the backbone of the industry.
People on the racetrack are very giving people.
It's a very oppressive community of people helping one another. We see it all the time.
Any help we need, it's right there in their hands.
It makes so much easier in the family to have somebody like Nathan to help them.
Looking for a fantastic meal? Stop by Malcolm's, a unique farm-to-table restaurant experience. Located at 617 Union Street in Schenectady, Malcolm's offers locally grown fresh foods, mouth-watering flavors, an enhanced drink menu, and terrific service. Malcolm's is a sure bet during Saratoga season. Make your reservation today.
Chain, lifting it up, lifting it up, lifting it up. Pin sagging, gold grills, lifting, trilling the cut, trilling the cut.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on a Wednesday morning. Happy to have you joining us live from the Saratoga backstretch, and also live sitting next to me, Skip Dickstein. He's the photographer for the Times Union. Been trying to get Skip in for a while now. It seems like every season we'll plug in one of the photographers whose work you normally see covering the Saratoga meet. We've had Barbara Livingston and Dave Harmon in here. Of course, Todd Marks does great work as well. But Skip, as I say, the staff photographer of the Times Union. Good morning.
How are you?
Happy to see you, buddy.
I'm glad to be here.
Happy to have you over here. As I said, we've been trying to get you for a while, and folks certainly familiar with your work in the Times-Union, but you also do work for other publications, and I went back and I was doing some bio work. The Eclipse Award was a Blood Horse production.
It was. Yeah, it was the 96 Breeders' Cup.
Breeders' Cup Classic.
Finished with Cigar, Alphabet Soup, and Louis Quatorze.
Yeah, there you go. And so the Eclipse Award-winning Skip Dickstein in here. Appreciate that. As we get started, always like to ask people, no matter what their profession, if you're working up here at the racetrack, how did you get into it? How did you get into the photography game? Has that been your career from the beginning?
Pretty much. My dad was a photographer, and so was my mother. And
oh, that's interesting.
They owned a studio in Albany, and my dad was also a polo player. There's the connection between me and the horses, and I've been involved in the horse business since 12 years old, which is a long time ago, for sure.
And so, how long have you been at the Times-Union?
A long time, too.
That works. That works. And how? I'm assuming right from the beginning you've been up here at the racetrack in the summers for the Times-Union.
My first race actually was with the Troy Record when I came back into the market from college. Was Onion beating Secretariat. That was the first major race I ever covered. So that'll give you an indication how long I've been doing this.
That's a pretty good start, though. You got off of one of the historic races up here at Saratoga. And again, doing some bio information, you said your dad was a polo player, but you started out actually working on the show side of things.
Yeah, I did. I bucked stalls, and then I worked up to the point where I was an assistant trainer. And which means I took all the grief and the trainer did his job. So, no, but it was, I've loved the horse business ever since I was a kid. It's a wonderful business.
And obviously, as I say, you cover the sport for the Times-Union here in the summertime up here at Saratoga, but you do other tracks as well during the year. Talk a little bit about some of the other venues you go to.
Well, we travel with the Blood Horse. We do the Triple Crown and the Breeders' Cup, and then if I'm needed, I will go wherever they want outside the area. I do a lot of traveling, and it's fun. It's except when you get into the Triple Crown, and the first race this year was underwater. The second race, you couldn't see the horses. I mean, that's real fun.
That was kind of everybody's take this year. Hey, I'm going to the Derby, and then you talk to them 3 days later. It's like, oh, you vey. But hopefully an anomaly. So you go to different venues during the year, and you've been to obviously many different venues over the course of your career, but every day we see you out here taking photos at Saratoga. And I'm just taking a guess, being that we're here and with this background, from a photographer's standpoint, Saratoga has to stand out, I'm guessing.
Oh, without question. You know, now that I've been to most of the major tracks in the country, I've not been to Europe yet, and that's my next focus, literally. But with the tracks here, Saratoga's truly my favorite. I think it's because it's my hometown track. And then beyond that, I'd say Santa Anita's like right up at the top. Keeneland's right at the top in terms of being beautiful venues to make pictures. And frankly, one of the things I really enjoy doing is going out in the mornings and doing the morning work. And that's the heft of what I do. And then, of course, I have to cover the racing, and so that fills out the rest of the horse racing images that I make.
Take us through a typical day for you up here at Saratoga.
It's usually on track by around 6 a.m., and then I'll get a phone call around 8:15 from Tim Wilkin. He'll give me my orders, so to speak, as to what he needs for his stories for the next day or days. And I fill those requests as best I can. But in the interim, from those 2 hour period, from when I get here until I hear from Tim, I'll go out and just shoot, whatever I want. And I've got specific space needs in the green sheet in the Times-Union that I have to fill. So I use that time to fill those, using the early morning stuff. And if I don't see anything, like this meet's been particularly hard because the weather's been so raw, so terrible. that 10 inches of rain in the first 2.5, 3 weeks. It's tough to make pictures other than raindrops. But those images, if I can get something out of that, that's fine. If not, I'll use the racing images in the afternoon to fill those specific needs in the green sheet and then in the sports section that we do.
Talk a little bit about the afternoon, where you kind of plant yourself for various races. If you're out there, obviously the stakes races are different than a claiming race or an allowance race, but what's the game plan normally? Where do you position yourself for a dirt race? Where do you position yourself for a turf race? And for a stakes race, it's not just you with your camera. You have some presets.
We have remotes, but I only do remotes on the weekends. I don't do remotes during the week. I have an associate that helps me with the remotes. His name's Tim Lanahan. Without him, the remotes probably wouldn't happen. I mean, the guy is a tireless worker. And but those are only for majors. For the lower level stakes, the listed stakes, the ungraded stakes, I will just hand shoot those and try to get as much out of them as I can. I'll try to vary my location where I stand along the rail, just so to give a little variety to the images that I make.
I'm going to ask you a question because I own my own television production company for a long time. I graduated from film school, and so I was looking through the lens on a moving image basis, as much as you're probably looking through the still lens for quite a while. And I kind of, over time, realized, and I'll ask from the still side if it's the same for you, you start to look at the world a little bit differently. And what I mean by that is, I would be driving down the street and I would see maybe an empty building or a dead tree that most people are probably going to think, I'm going to drive right by or think is an eyesore. But as a photographer, do you look through the lens and just look at the world differently and think, oh, the light is hitting that just right?
Oh, yeah. And in fact, I was over at the Oklahoma track the other day, and I was just looking. And there was a farrier's truck with the back open, and there was this just wonderful sculpture looking of all the racing plates, all the new ones that were all ready to go, and I made an image of that. And it could be any place on the track that something will catch my eye, and I'll make an image. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, and more than not, it's not so good. So you just take the best images, and that's what we run up the flag for the paper or the magazine.
That brings up one of the other questions I had. You talk about, you take pictures, some good and some not so good. Talk a little bit about the difference in technology, because now as a photographer you have the luxury of, with a digital camera, snapping as many shots as you want, essentially, as compared to the old days when film and you had to develop the film. And so now you can take more of those shots that are a little bit experimental and hope there's a good one in there. Talk about the change in technology from when you started.
Well, even the way you hold the camera. Like, I can do a Hail Mary, or hold the camera up, or hold the camera down, hold at different angles, and then I can look in the back and determine what it looks like. And with Nikon's addition of articulating screens, I can actually hold the camera down and I can watch the screen and determine what the images are looking like. Another thing is it used to be 36 frames and change the film. Well, it's not 36 frames anymore. It's like 3,000 frames. And it gives a photographer a lot more latitude. And I don't have to worry about changing film. I don't even have to worry about changing ISO. I can do it from my right hand while I'm actually shooting. And that ability means I don't have to take the camera down from my eye if I don't want to. And it gives you far more power as a photojournalist.
We did a seminar down at the Times Union together right before the season started, and you were talking about showing some shots at Kentucky Derby weekend. We're going to look at some of your work in just a few, but you talked about working on Kentucky Derby weekend. Travers weekend just went by on a big day like that, Derby Day, Travers Day. How many shots do you put in the camera?
I'd say, personally, I probably, outstanding of the remotes, I probably shot 3,000 or 4,000 frames.
As compared to what you would have done 20 years ago?
Yeah, about 10 times as much.
Is it really? And talk a little bit about the technology not just taking the picture, but it's completely different now. What did you do 20 years ago when you had the film as far as the Times-Union? Hey, we want the story on the Travers in tomorrow's newspaper. You've taken the picture at 6 o'clock at night. What was the process you had to go through then with film to get it down to the TU?
What we do is immediately after each race, we download the digital files on my laptop up in the box, and I'll transmit the best images to the paper, and that way they have the ability to look at what we've got and be ready when the picture editor or whoever's laying out the page has the opportunity to go through the images. And they already know by the time I get to the Travers what they're going to use for the undercards, or what they're going to use for like crowd images, and what we're doing. They're just waiting for the money shots.
Yeah.
At that point, they're just waiting for the Travers to fill the big holes. But the little holes are already, like, they can see what we've got to work with, and it makes it a lot easier.
So now it's instantaneous, essentially. You're on the internet, boom, you send, and not just a single picture, you send a bunch of pictures and they can choose. But as I say, 20 years ago, what was that process? Because it was all
forever.
hard copy stuff. And I'm assuming there was that roller drum thing that sent the picture
to transmit.
But what did you? I'm assuming you took the film in, and you had to develop the film.
It was forever.
What was the process?
I mean, before you could transmit from the negative, we used to have to make the prints, and it was dreadfully slow. But just remember, with technology, it may speed up, but then deadlines get earlier and earlier. So it's the catch-22 of publishing. And of course, now you're competing with everybody. So the web product is becoming very important, and people want to see the web product. They depend on the web product to get their information a lot of times. And then the next morning, they can rehash it, and the way Tim writes his stuff, these packages go in the next morning, and people have the opportunity to relive the whole thing, especially the way Tim writes them.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a wonderful writer, and having a thoroughbred writer, even in a daily newspaper these days, is wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Times-Union does great coverage, and clearly you're a big part of that. Let's zip through some of the photos here and get a look. We have a little bit of delay here, but I'll have the guys in the control room bring up the first picture, and let's talk a little bit about that, because we're looking at first image is Justify winning the Kentucky Derby. This is one of those remote shots from under the rail. Talk about that process of setting up the remote shot and what you're looking for the image here. Obviously, you have the nice shot of the grandstand in the background. What's the game plan when you set these shots up?
At Churchill in particular, you're looking for an image that shows the spires in the background. I mean, that's quintessential Churchill, and that's what you're looking for. With the weather as bad as it was, we started pretty much around 6:30 in the morning setting up the remotes, and it was just before the rain started. So we were able to get the remotes in, get them covered up, get them packaged, and that way we only had to open up a small portion of the bags to be able to make an image like that.
Yeah, and again, it's a beautiful image. His ears back, and there he is on the way to victory. Next one up, Justify in the stretch from the other side. So I'm assuming you took this one. As I say, we're looking at Justify coming down the stretch with the infield in the background. Talk a little bit about this image.
Oh yeah, that's my handheld shot, and you can see he's off all fours. But more importantly, you can see the amount of mud that he's throwing. Can you imagine being the horse that's behind him? But we're dealing with shooting in sheet rain that day, and that just causes all kinds of issues beyond just making photographs. You have to prepare your equipment, you have to cover it, and it just kind of takes some of the fun out of it when you're standing in ankle-deep mud.
And I'll ask you a technical question on the photo side. I'm assuming this flat light is not really appealing. Flat light of an overcast, rainy day is not as appealing as maybe a sunny day.
I really don't have a problem with that, because this way you can see underneath the jock's helmet, you can see his eyes.
Yeah, okay. So
I know a lot of people depend on that beautiful sunlight, beautiful contrast, but then you lose their eyes.
Yeah, that's.
And in any sports photograph, it's either the eyes or the baseball, or the football, and the eyes.
That's a good point. Speaking of the eyes, a happy Mike Smith after winning the Kentucky Derby here, looking to the sky and kind of celebrating. And I'm sure that a big event like this, the game plan is, we'll get the horse race, but the post-race activities are just as important.
Yeah, jubilation is very important because you want to be able to show the emotion. And of course, Mike is a very emotional guy, and I've known him for years, and it's actually fun covering him because of his he emotes after the race big time.
Yeah, clearly they're happy. We have another shot of Mike Smith in celebration after the race with a little bit of champagne. That's up on the winner's circle celebration, and again the post race being just as important as the race itself. And you want to get all of this kind of thing too.
Well, yeah, this is as much fun for me as shooting the actual finish of the race, because again, it's all about emotion. Bettors are excited when they win lots of money. Have you been excited lately?
Yeah, not as much as I would like to.
And I started out, a lot of my coverage of major sports was auto racing. So this was very common.
Oh, sure.
The beer thrown in the air, the United States Grand Prix, they popped the cork. So I understood what was going on when they started doing it at Churchill, and it's been wonderful for pictures.
Yeah, I mean, you have the champagne, you have all the smiling owners in the background. I had a note here, too. I wanted to ask you your thoughts. A couple of years ago when American Pharoah won the Triple Crown, there was that picture on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I'll get your take, because some people weren't happy with it because it wasn't the traditional horse coming under the wire, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But if folks don't remember, it was in the background, American Pharoah coming down the stretch to win the Triple Crown. But the foreground, it was a bunch of people holding up their cell phones taking a picture. And to me, I like pictures like that because it's more than just the horse winning. It's a story, and it tells the time. I mean, 20 years from now, will cell phones still be a thing? But it defined the time of this is what people do now.
Well,
I like the picture, but what was your take?
I thought it was a really gutsy move on Sports Illustrated's part. And frankly, I thought as a photojournalist, and that's what I've been trained as, this is telling the story. It's not just the horse running, completing the race and going under the wire. You're seeing exactly what the people are seeing, and that's extraordinarily important.
Yeah. As I say, I thought it was exactly the same. I told a story of the moment, which was kind of nice. Speaking of Triple Crown winning, it's Justify. Your next picture, Belmont Stretch, a little bit more of a close-up shot of Justify. And I'll ask, it was a Triple Crown. American Pharoah, I was down for that. It was incredible as he came under the wire. Justify, the crowd was going wild. Do you get caught up in the emotion of a situation like this as well?
Well, to be honest with you, this Triple Crown, this was the first time I actually put the camera down and watched and listened to the race as they made it into the clubhouse turn, or the final, the far turn. And I could hear the crowd normally I can't hear the crowd. It could be as loud as could be, but I'm literally focused on what I'm doing. I have to be. But this is the first time I wanted to hear what it was like to be at a Triple Crown race and be there when it was time to win, when the horse was probably going to win the Triple Crown and the crowd was going crazy. And then I had to, wake the brain up again and get the camera up and shoot the race.
Yeah, great shot there of him getting close to the finish line, and then another post-race shot. This is a great shot. Again, Mike Smith showing some emotion, and the kind of emotion you can appreciate on the racetrack as he wins the race and gives the horse a little bit of congratulations as well. There's a nice shot after the race.
Yeah, it was just a lucky grab.
And how often does that kind of thing, how often is serendipity part of what you do?
You make your own luck.
I like that.
Because
I think you're exactly right.
You need to keep your head in the game, and I'll tell you, it's been, with this weather we've had here, it's been a big distraction for me. So,
and that leads us perfectly into the next set of pictures. We were talking a little bit about it at that seminar we had at the Times Union earlier this summer. We're going to look at a shot of the Preakness here, Justify in the Preakness fog, and you've alluded to it already, but just talk. We had Larry Colmus a week ago talking about how difficult it was for him to call the race on television. How difficult was it for you to photograph the race in really a dense fog on Preakness Day?
Oh, yeah. Well, the best line I've ever heard in racing, and I told this at the seminar the other night before the meet started, was the on-track race caller. He says, I think they're approaching the starting gate. I mean, then you start to worry because you're the one who has to capture what's going on at the race. And it's like, okay. And the first time I saw the horses, all I saw was shapes around the 16th pole. And then I saw that big white nose. And I just went to the big white nose and hoped he won the race. And that was my shot.
From a guy who, as I say, used to look through the television camera, you're stationed where you were looking at the horses coming at you. How are you focusing? Are you just you have a wide?
No, I shoot long glass.
Yeah, okay.
I shoot very long glass, and I'll freely admit I use autofocus. But autofocus in the fog doesn't always work.
Yeah.
But again, the equipment that I use is the top of the line equipment that Nikon produces, and thankfully it captured those moments.
Yeah, and again, that has to be a photographer's nightmare, no question about it.
Why do you think I have no hair?
Well, and I'm coming right close, and I'm not taking any pictures.
That's because you're a handicapper.
Yeah. That's right. So there's a reason for you nailed it, hit it on the head. Another shot of Justify in the Preakness. This one looking back at the grandstand, and again, these are always kind of good iconic shots that, again, tell the story, because you see the situation in the background, you see the crowd, and as I say, I think these are kind of storytelling shots as well.
Yeah, that was the first time by the grandstand, so everybody's still pretty clean. But when they arrived at the finish line again, and there's also problems with when you have a group of horses go past those lenses, they throw up a lot of mud.
Yeah.
So, and we were very fortunate that none of our glass had any mud on it after the race. So we got some wonderful images.
Yeah, I hadn't even really thought about that, but they're down there at foot level where they would get all the mud.
Yeah.
Now there's this little series of photos that I just thought were nice to take a look at, and kind of those story photos on the behind the scenes of racing. And the first one, this is a great shot, and it's a great shot of kind of the unsung heroes out there on the racetrack. One of them did it just the other day. Outrider caught a loose horse here the other day, and you have a great shot of an outrider catching a loose horse here. And again, that plays in the kind of the serendipity, because you have to be on the point on the track with your camera where this takes place. But man, you got a great shot there.
It's all about being at the right place at the right time. And Pepe San Juan is the outrider there, and he was just about as far over as he could get to grab this horse. And he's a big boy, and it was amazing to see. But
yeah, I think people have to remember, it's not just leaning over and grabbing those reins. He's a horseman on his horse too. He's got to get his horse up there going in and to capture that moment really speaks to all of that. And then some scenic shots again up here at Saratoga. We have a horse bath, and I said earlier, I think Saratoga, and you talk about walking around in the morning, we're back here, and just as I say, just eyeballing it. It seems like it just lends itself to great photos.
This is the fun thing for me to do, is to be able to capture these moments in the morning. And I enjoy this hour of the day in the backstretch, and it makes it so much more fun, especially when you can get a couple of these images in the camera and you've got them, and then you go to the front side in the afternoon and you're comfortable and you're like, okay, I'm feeling pretty good. I've done my job today.
And I will tip my cap to you as a photographer as well, which goes to the point I made earlier. I think photographers see the world a little bit differently, that, the hose in the bath, it's somebody standing there wouldn't see that image necessarily, but you recognize the way the light is hitting, you're going to get that great photo.
Wow. It's a nice picture.
Let's take a look at another one. This one's kind of funny. The horse shadow picture. because it's hard to believe that Shadow is as well defined as it is. It seems like the horse would have to be very close for that to happen. But man, that is a great image of the shadow of the horse.
I was very lucky.
Yeah, that's another one where a lot of people just kind of walk by that and not even recognize, oh, there's a great image.
Yeah, it was one of the first mornings we actually had sun on the backside. So I was going to take every advantage I could of that.
Yeah, that was a great photo. And finally, again, just the iconic shot of Saratoga in the morning with the horse out for a walk out by the barns. And again, this is what makes Saratoga so special. If folks come over here for breakfast and take those tram rides, you get to see some of this kind of thing, but a beautiful shot.
It's what makes Saratoga Saratoga.
Yeah.
And it was a cooler morning. It's over by Mark Hennig's barn. I must have shot, every year I shoot something that turns out to be really nice over there. And it's just a beautiful setting.
And I will tell people that you have a website, skipdickstein.com. People can visit that. You also have a Twitter account that you post pictures on.
Speaking of Twitter, how's your Twitter account doing?
So far, so good. Over 600, and I've tweeted, I think, 13 times or 14 times.
Well, come on, you got to get moving.
I got to get in. I do have to get into the swing of things.
I'm going to bug you like Bick bugs you on the radio.
I'll step it up. But again, what's your Twitter handle?
It's @SkipsCam.
Okay, and so people can check that out. And before I let you go, you've mentioned the camera a couple of times, and for folks who are kind of budding photographers themselves, what is your camera choice?
Nikon. Absolutely.
Particular model?
Well, I use the D5, the D850. Just picked up a new lens, the 200 to 500. I have a whole array of lenses. I don't let my equipment stop me from working. Master's only as good as his tools.
There you go. I like that. And this is the master, the guy who you see every day in the Times Union, the Blood Horse, as well as I say, Eclipse-winning photographer Skip Dickstein. I'm thrilled you came over.
Well, thanks very much for having me. This has been fun.
Skip, you'll see him out on the front side in the afternoon as well, as he is out there among all the photographers taking pictures all afternoon long. 6 more days.
Well, 4 for me.
Oh, well, that works.
I get Sunday and Monday off this year.
Oh, well, there you go.
So,
unfortunately, well, no, I was going to say unfortunately I have to be. It's not unfortunately. I'm happy to be here, but I do have to work the entire 6 days. But as I say, what better job than this? As it is another nice day up here at Saratoga as we kick off the final week. Skip, appreciate the visit.
My pleasure.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Shug McGahee is in the house. We'll talk a little bit about some of his horses over the years, some he has coming up, some have run earlier in the meet. All of that right after this. Stay tuned.
For 4 generations, Bruce Cerrone and his family have continued the 96-year tradition of delighting their local following and faithful summer crowd with the finest authentic Italian recipes. Classic Italian dishes made with the freshest ingredients and served in a home-like setting, where everyone is welcome. Some things have changed in the last 96 years, but not Pinnell's commitment to the finest in Italian cuisine. Pinnell's Italian Restaurant, a Saratoga tradition since 1922. 284 Jefferson Street, just minutes from the track.
Sign up today for Capital OTB's handicapping series and plan your trip to Las Vegas.
Visit Rivers Casino and Resort, the Capital Region's only destination for live table game action and the hottest new slots paying out millions. And they're off. Horse betting is now at Rivers Casino and Resort with Capital off-track betting terminals and live tellers located just off the gaming floor at Van Slyck's. Get in on all the action at Rivers Casino and Resort.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Very happy to be joined now by Shug McGaughey, a fixture on the New York racing scene. I'm sure very familiar to our audience. Good morning.
Good morning.
I have to ask you, I pulled up the Equibase stats and whatnot, and if people look in the racing forum, you're listed as Claude McGaughey. Does anybody call you Claude?
No, not very many. If they are, they don't know me.
As I say, I think many in our audience are very familiar with you, but the nice thing about Saratoga, a lot of people are introduced to the races here, and I think join us in the morning as new fans, and so they might not be as familiar with you. For them, talk a little bit about how you first got into the game, and one of the interesting things is, I don't think it was a family thing. I think you kind of jumped in.
Yeah, it wasn't a family thing. None of my family was in it, but I grew up in Lexington, so I was familiar with Keeneland. My father would take me out there maybe once in the spring and once in the fall, and I got pretty interested in the atmosphere of the whole thing, and so, you know, I got old enough to drive and stuff. Maybe after school I would pop out to Keeneland when the races were going on. Then I went to college in Mississippi, and we'd pop over to Oak Lawn or down to Fairgrounds or something, you know, when we could. And then after a couple of years, they had the first draft lottery, and I drew a high number, and I asked my parents, can I maybe stay out a semester, and they said, yeah, but you're going to have to find a job. So I had a friend that had 6 or 8 horses out at Keeneland, and cheap. So I went out there and I asked him, and you know, I started at the bottom, $40 a week, 7 days a week, and loved every minute of it. You know, I didn't really care that much about school ever, but when I started learning this was something that I really enjoyed learning about, and I tried to spend every minute and around him, and then I just kind of worked myself up. I went to work for the Whiteleys, and when Ruffian was around there, so I wasn't around her much, but and then I went to work the next spring for David Whiteley, and I was his assistant until the spring of '79 when I got my first opportunity to train.
Very good. And I saw you were associated with the Whiteleys. Were you there? My favorite racehorse of all time, Forgo. Were you there?
I was. In fact, when he first came in there, he put him down in the barn. You know, we had probably 3 or 4 barns there, and somebody be in charge of me, put him down in my barn, and he said, just treat him like another horse. Well, I noticed as the weeks went on, he was starting to make more trips down to that barn, Mr. Whiteley. So he was starting to figure out, well, this just isn't another horse, you know, and but then he went into their barn, and Mr. Whiteley trained him, and then I was up with David, so I wasn't around him as much, but I was around him that winter, and I obviously enjoyed watching him run in all of his races.
Yeah, he could do short and long, and
yeah,
you know, that spectacular where he ran down the stretch, and was it Honest Pleasure or Foolish Pleasure? It was Honest Pleasure, wasn't it?
Right.
Just people look that up on YouTube, certainly. I mean, this leads, you know, getting in the game and falling in love with it and whatnot leads me into a question I've asked a lot of trainers that have sat here this season. It's a tough job. I mean, it's 24/7, 365, because you have living animals there, and you have to get up early, and you have to win races and deal with your owners and whatnot. So what's the passion? What gets the blood flowing as far as being a trainer? Why do you love it?
Well, I enjoy training the horses, and then I like the competitiveness of it in the afternoon. And my whole deal is I've always wanted to start with the young ones and try to develop into a nice horse, and with really kind of with some of the people I was with before the fixes, John Ed Anthony, that's the way he was. He was looking for the good ones. he told me one time, he said, my worst nightmare is my best horse runs his best race on Wednesday afternoon. So
that's good.
And then that's what the Phippses were interested in, and Stuart Janney also. And so, you know, I enjoy doing that. I enjoy seeing them kind of come around. I'm on a different part of the Phipps family right now because, you know, Cynthia and Mr. Phipps and Denny are all gone, and, you know, they were a big part of my life, and I really enjoyed them. And, you know, a lot of the pedigrees that are over there now are horses that I trained the mother and, you know, maybe even the grandmother. So, you know, I kind of enjoying that. My son's over there working for me now. I'm enjoying kind of having him around, and along with, you know, Robbie, my other assistant, who's been there for a long time, and kind of watching them interact and doing their thing. Sometimes it's good, and other times they make me mad. But you know, so I think a lot of that's why I keep doing it. You always look up and you think, well, this one's going home to be a brood mare, and they're going to breed it to Warfront or Speightstown or somebody, and, you know, maybe that'll be the next real good one. So.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid and first got into the game, I was watching The Tonight Show one night, and Dick Van Patten and his son were on. Dick Van Patten, of course, was a big horse racing fan, and his son was talking about, gee, I go to the track with my dad, and he'll look at the racing for him, and he'll say, oh, I remember this one's mother, and I remember this one's grandmother. And the kid said, I don't know how my dad does this. And now I've been in the game long enough, I can relate to that. And I look at those Phipps horses, and I think, oh, I know the line all the way back.
I know that one,
Yeah, very impressive. And just, again, I pulled up Equibase last night. And one of the tabs you can hit on for any trainer is top horses, and just to kind of go down some of the horses you've trained: Easy Goer, Orb, Honor Code, Coronado's Quest, Storm Flag Flying, Heavenly Prize, Personal Ensign, Inside Information, My Rhythm, or Rhythm, My Flag. Just a kind of a who's who. Again, an Eclipse Award winner and in the Hall of Fame. I know this is a tough question. I won't pin you to it, but I have to ask it and see if you have one. Is there a favorite among one of these?
Well, I can span that a little bit. One of the horse that I really enjoyed training was Seeking the Goal, because he was a 110% horse. You know, Easy Goer was a lot more talented. You know, he gave me my first Classic winner, Mr. Phipps's first Classic winner. You know, Personal Ensign was a career maker, because when she did what she did, no horse had ever done it. Really enjoyed Lure. Storm Flag Flying was, I just kept my fingers crossed every day with her, because she was tough. She was a rough actor, as well as Coronado's Quest. But I enjoyed Coronado's Quest a lot, because he was the first real nice horse I had for Stuart Janney, and I saw all the pleasure that he got out of him, and that I got out of him. I mean, you know, he broke his maiden here going 5/8, and then he won the Travers going 1.25 miles, and there's not a lot of horses that can do that. And so, you know, I have to span it out a little bit, but, you know, Easy Goer was, you know, gave me a lot that I hadn't had, and then, like I say, I think Personal Ensign is one of them that's kind of a career maker.
Yeah, Coronado's Quest, as you mentioned, I remember that horse as being kind of a project, and so that has to be very satisfying to get a horse like that to win the way he did.
He was a project.
And you mentioned Personal Ensign, which is great, because I pulled up the stretch run from the 1998 Breeders' Cup Distaff, and Winning Colors, for folks who don't remember, will be on the lead. She had won the Kentucky Derby, beating the boys. Personal Ensign was 12 for 12 coming into this race. As we watch the stretch run, you will think it is going to be very difficult to go 13 for 13, as Winning Colors has the lead, and they turn into the stretch, and Personal Ensign is sitting back in the pack. She will subsequently come up in the stretch run and kind of sit third at a point where you still kind of feel like this is going to be tough. And then she gets up to win by just kind of a snudge to go 13 for 13, undefeated in the career, in what was subsequently her last race. Do you remember sitting in the stands as they were in the stretch? And what was your confidence level? Did you think, oh, this is going to be tough today? Or did you have enough confidence in her to think it's not over till it's over?
My confidence level wasn't very high right now, because Winning Color loved this racetrack. Goodbye Halo was behind her. She had won the Kentucky Oaks, and I was standing with a friend of mine, you know, and he kind of looked over and said, doesn't look good today. This was before sort of the stretch run, but, you know, I could see her coming, but I still didn't think she was going to get there. I mean, they're past the 8th pole now, and she's 3 or 4 lengths behind, just past it. And, you know, this wasn't anything that a trainer did, that a jockey did. You can see him riding out there to try to get in her way. But, this was just all horse. You know, she had a, you know, I'm going to win, and it doesn't matter what. But it sure wasn't anything I did or what Randy did or anything else. Randy came back, told me, said it never was in doubt. I said, well, I wish you could have told me that at the 16th hole, you know. But it was, you know, it would have been too bad if she got beat that way because she'd won her first 12 and she'd have gone home 12-1. But luckily, she got to go home 13-0.
And I don't know if I mentioned it, but what was it, 2 or 3 races before she'd won the Whitney up here against the boys?
Ran in the Whitney, beat Gulch, who was a very good horse, and you know, we decided to try her against the Colts, and it rained earlier in the day, but it rained really hard, and the rain didn't get down in the track. I'd been up here looking at it because I wasn't going to be real happy about running her on off track, and you know, it worked out good for us.
Yeah, as they say, that's going to go down as not just one of the all-time great Breeders' Cup races, but one of the all-time great races there to finish a career 13 for 13. All right, let's talk a little bit about horses you have coming up, or maybe some that have run earlier, and what the game plan will be. We're going to go back and watch August 11th, the Lure. Your Inspector Lindley is going to win here. The number 3 horse gets up late by 3/4 of a length. Talk a little bit about this performance, and I see that Inspector Lindley nominated for the Brad Baruch. Is that going to be the game plan?
That's the game plan. He'd won the Saranac up here when he was a 3-year-old, and then last year, a couple of his races I wasn't too crazy about, so I gave him some time off, and all 4 of his races were really good. I mean, he got beat at Keeneland, he got beat at Belmont just a little ways, you know, coming on a little ways, and then we took him to Louisville and run him in the Wise Dan there, and it was sort of the same thing. He just got beat. He kind of didn't get the trip. Brad Cox won it with misdirection. He sort of got the trip, and so, you know, we were looking forward to getting him up here and running him, and he was supposed to run on Whitney Day, and they canceled the races, which I thought was a very good thing, you know, the last 2, and so we got to run him on that day, and, you know, the track was still, the turf was still pretty soft. And I think, you know, if we get a firm course here, I think you'll probably like that a little better.
Doing well coming into the race coming up on the weekend?
Seems to be.
On the holiday weekend, let's put it that way. And I wanted to show you, talked earlier, you like to develop the 2-year-olds, and you had a 2-year-old first-time starter that looked pretty good back on August 18th. This is Code of Honor getting it done. Career debut, takes him pretty much all the way, wins by a chart margin of a length and a half. Code of Honor, the number 2 horse, as we watch the stretch run here. Talk about this one, debut effort and pretty good performance, and what's next for Code of Honor?
Well, he did run very well that day. I watched the horse that was second run the first time, and I was impressed with the way he ran, so I thought maybe we might have a little trouble with him. But this horse he showed speed in the mornings. He's a very athletic type horse. As you can see, he's a very good mover. I think still a little bit immature, you know, looking. He was growing, and, you know, people would ask me about him. I said, the only thing that really worries me is his constitution. But I'm kind of seeing since he ran that maybe he's putting on a little bit of weight, and hopefully maybe he's quick growing, and that'll help him do that. And I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to run him. You know, I'll sort of watch the Hopeful this weekend and see what, you know, there won't be a lounge race for him, so I'll have to try to run him in a stake, and whether it'll be in New York or whether I'll take him to the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland, which could be a good possibility because with his speed going around 2 turns, short stretch might be an idea. But, you know, that's just something I might have to figure out. Obviously, I'd love to run him in the Champagne, but we'll just have to see how it all works out.
All right, as I say, he looked very good in the debut the other day. That brings me to another question I've asked a lot of trainers. I've been asking trainers, how do you decide whether to work your horse on the Oklahoma as opposed to the main track? But you're across the street, and as I looked at, again, a limited look here, but just the past performances I had under me here, it looks like you're mostly working over at the Oklahoma because you're right there, so I assume that's the game plan.
I've always liked the Oklahoma track. And a few years back, I went through some hard times, the Oklahoma track, so I was coming over here and working a lot of them, but you know, Glenn Kozak, nobody can say anything about him better than me because he's done a terrific job up here, and he's a great guy and takes a lot of pride in these tracks. And the Oklahoma track this year has been fabulous. There's almost not a day that we've had, even with all the rain we had earlier, that if we needed to work, we could work. So I have not worked a horse on the main track here. Rick that works the gate here on the main track, the school and gate, is also at Payson in the winter, and so I've just been taking them over there and breaking them, and it's all worked out pretty well for me. I think I've had very few problems, and a couple of the problems might have been Shug-induced problems too, but that's the main reason. I think both these tracks are very good, but I've also always liked the little bit more deeper training track than say bringing them over here.
Sure, and as I say, you're right over there. Let's hit another one coming up Friday this week, Dancing All Night in an allowance race on Friday. We're going to go back and watch a second place finish back on the 17th of this month. Number 2, Sweet By and By will win, but number 5, Dancing All Night, runs a good second. Only 6 career starts so far, a win and 4 second place finishes, including this one we're looking at. What are you looking for Dancing All Night on Friday afternoon?
Well, she came out of this race very well. I mean, it was just a matter of this filly won, and I think that was 4 or 5 in a row for then, because she can run in state bred races, and then they can revert back to AO dance, which I'm not a big proponent of, but that's not my call. And but she's a talented filly. Obviously she's 5 years old and run a few times, so she's had some problems, but she seems to be doing really well now, and I'd like to run her here, and because I think she's doing well. I'll put blinkers on her to where hopefully maybe she's never wanted to break real well. And hopefully maybe that'll make her focus a little more in the gate and break a little better and put her in the race. And in that race she didn't break good because they had a horse acting up, wouldn't go in the gate, and she stood in there for a good while, and she didn't break as well as I wanted to, and Johnny had to kind of use her to get her up there, but she just couldn't beat the winner.
That's another question I've asked trainers who have been in here. It's just something you brought up. You're going to add blinkers to try to change things up. When you do that, do you get a workout in blinkers into them?
Yes, and she won't have a formal workout in the blinkers. She's been to the gate and stood in the gate with them on, and I've let her gallop along in them. But I'm just, really I was just sort of more how well she was focusing in them, and I'm hoping that maybe it'll help her drop her head a little bit. She wants to carry her head a little bit higher than I would really like, especially for a sprinter. But, so a little bit of what we're doing is hit or miss right now to see. But she is doing well. I mean, she galloped really good this morning, so I didn't really think it would come up with that many horses in it. But everybody was maybe trying to take advantage of the last weekend, and so I'm looking forward to running her.
Another horse that potentially is coming up, nominated for the September 1st Glens Falls, a win earlier in the meet, August 2nd, Danceland, be the number 1 horse on the replay here, and as I say, nominated for the Glens Falls. Is that going to be the game plan for Danceland?
She's been entering in the Glens Falls. That's what I wanted to do. I thought her race here was really good. In her race back at Belmont was real good, and so we've been kind of wanting to stretch her out, and I thought was a good time to do it. I mean, she's kind of out of conditions now, and I can, run her and see if mile 3/8 helps her, or, because if it does, it's going to open up a lot more doors for her.
You got like a performance like that too. Nice gutsy. It's a ding-dong battle, and she kind of pulls away right at the end.
Yeah.
And finally, I wanted to touch on Kentucky Downs opens this weekend, and you have a potential starter in the One Dreamer at Kentucky Downs, the quirky turf course down at Kentucky on leave. I'm going to go back to December at Gulfstream. December 16th, On Leave is going to win the My Charmer. On Leave will be the number 5 horse here. Subsequently, a third, a second, fifth, a fourth. Fourth most recently up here in the Della Rose, but that was over a soft turf course. I would expect probably more firm down at Kentucky Downs on the opening weekend. What are your thoughts on the weekend at Kentucky Downs for On Leave?
Well, On Leave's a very nice horse. I think the other day here in the Della Rose, she just kind of caught a turf course that maybe she wasn't as good over, and she was only beat a couple of lengths. So I'm hoping we get firm down there, and she's been training probably as well or better than I've seen her train since this race in the Della Rose. So we get her down there in one piece, and she handles the different sort of racetrack. Giroux's gonna ride her, so I think he knows that turf really well. So we're looking forward to it. And we got a couple others we're going to run down there next week if they get in. So it's something kind of fun to do.
Big money down there,
Yeah,
too,
big
obviously, as well. Shug, certainly appreciate the visit this morning. You've had a really good meet so far at Saratoga. We wish you good luck going forward on the weekend and certainly in the fall as well.
I agree. Thank you very much.
Shug McGahee. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap things up on this Wednesday morning at Saratoga. Stay tuned.
You a fisherman?
You've been watching Racing Across America with Seth Merrow. Racing Across America has been brought to you by...
Bet, and cheer on live racing from Woodbine and Mohawk Park. Thoroughbred and harness action. The wagers are just the beginning. Watch award-winning broadcasts covering both breeds, incredible battles contested over the most unique grass course in North America. Experience the full fields with over 130 thoroughbred and 160 live harness days. Get access to free handicapping material and join the ranks of Woodbine and Mohawk Park players from all over the globe. For more information, visit woodbine.com.
Come on.
I want sales reports on my desk by Monday.
Whoops. My bad.
Love racing? RTN brings you every live simulcast on your home television, plus live video streaming and race replays on your PC and mobile devices. To order, visit rtn.tv. RTN, a breed apart.
The backstretch workers are the heart and soul of what we do.
They're the backbone of the industry.
People on the racetrack are very giving people.
It's a very oppressive community of people helping one another. We see it all the time.
Any help we need it. It's right there in their hands.
It makes so much easier in the family to have somebody like Nathan to help them.
A day at the track isn't complete without a night at the Horseshoe. Great food, hot music, and cold drinks. So why go downtown when all the action's just across from the track? The Horseshoe Inn at the corner of Nelson and Gridley.
All right, let me wrap it up here on a Wednesday morning live from Saratoga, Racing Across America. I'm Seth Merrill. Thanks for joining us this morning. Thanks also to Joe Clancy, Skip Dickstein, and Shug McGahee for joining us on a nice Wednesday morning show. Don't forget, at any time, if you missed the show, you can check us out on our YouTube channel. They're all archived there. Let me remind you also, the promos coming up today at the Clubhouse Racebook. It's Prize Wheel Day. Stop by the Racebook 7-Eleven. Central Avenue in Albany and get your chance to spin the prize wheel. Tomorrow, Fan Appreciation Day out at the Bridgeport branch. If you're out there, swing on by and take advantage of that. Tomorrow also a 1% bonus day with Saratoga Wagers. You can check out the website for more information as far as the bonus. And Friday, the Bounty Bet returns. There is $800 up for grabs. It is the late pick 5 here at Saratoga coming up Friday, the Bounty Bet. And last year I did this last week too. I'm going to do it again this year. I'd love if people would write us, viewer mail at capitalotv.com. Let us know what you think of the programming. I get great feedback on the front side virtually every day, which I totally appreciate. Folks walk up and say, love the programs and whatnot, and again, completely appreciate the feedback. But there's the guys that work behind the scenes, and I love them to hear from you as well. So take a couple of minutes and just let us know. Viewer mail at capitalotv.com, or tweet us to our Twitter account, or go to our Facebook page and make a comment there, and just let us know what you think of the morning programming, what you like, what you'd like to see more of, maybe something we haven't done. Hey, try this next year. But again, love to get some feedback. Last year I did it, as I say, the last week, and got a nice chunk of responses from folks that were great. We'd love to do that again, as I say, so the folks behind the scenes can also get a little feedback from you, the viewer. So again, viewer mail at capitalotv.com. That wraps up Racing Across America for this Wednesday. Back tomorrow morning here on the network, 9 o'clock with a handicapper's report, 10 o'clock with more Racing Across America. Enjoy the racing this afternoon. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.
You've been watching Racing Across America with Seth Merrow. Racing Across America has been brought to you by CapitalOTBBet.com, the premier online wagering site in New York State. CapitalOTBBet.com. Sign up today. Pinnell's Restaurant, a Saratoga tradition since 1922. 284 Jefferson Street, Saratoga, just minutes from the track. Thoroughfan, giving the fan a voice. Find them at thoroughfan.com. Woodbine Racetrack. Pick, bet, and cheer on world-class horse racing north of the border. And the new Capital OTB mobile app. Wager anytime, anywhere. Download it free from the iTunes Store or Google Play.